everyone. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. We're down on the Tsunamachi Canal, which is a lovely, tranquil place just off Tokyo Port. And Beth, the World Cup has been anything but tranquil the last couple of days. The weekend was a hell of a weekend. We'll go to the second game first. The Wallabies, of course, playing Wales. Plenty of drama. Obviously, a Wallabies loss, a very narrow Wallabies loss. I guess we're talking a lot about refereeing. We're talking about Samu Kerevi's elbow to the throat, which was deemed illegal. Samu and Michael Checker said he was embarrassed by that call. Samu Kerevi gave some comments to you guys after the match, and then again today. What's Samu's version of events? What's his take on this whole drama?
Yeah, well, it was really surprising after the game last night. Samu Kerevi's not normally a fiery kind of character. He usually keeps it pretty tame when he's talking to media, but he was very fired up last night about that decision that you mentioned, saying that the game is kind of leaning towards getting a bit soft and, kind of joking that he'd prefer to play NRL because he's not even sure what the rules are and how they're policing them these days, which is a pretty strong statement to make when you're one of, Australian rugby's biggest stars. And then, as you mentioned, he was up again today and was a little bit more apologetic towards the referees or sympathetic towards the referees, but still aired some frustrations about, the inconsistencies that are coming through, just after that game on Sunday night. We found out that Piers Francis was cleared for his high tackle, in the England-USA game, and so many people around the rugby world are scratching their heads because they're not sure what constitutes a suspension anymore, and it's frustrating for everyone.
And you mentioned the word inconsistency there. That's what players want, that's what coaches want, that's what officials want, consistency, so they can prepare for it. And I think that's the big thing with the elbow to the throat is that, we just haven't seen any. There may have been a sort of an advisory put out at some point, but it's just not been policed. And then to pull out that in the middle of a World Cup game, a very important World Cup game, it just surprised everyone.
This high tackle framework was really only introduced, or this crackdown was really only reinforced in July this year. So even, Southern Hemisphere referees weren't implementing it until the Rugby Championship, which was, only 2 months before the World Cup. So
that's actually a good point because the Northern Hemisphere were using it from the Six Nations onwards, or that period. So they've had a year or so to get used to this area. So perhaps it's the Southern Hemisphere needed to be looking to bring it in earlier, or if there was an opportunity to bring it in earlier. So focus all the attention on referees, right? Yeah. The Wallabies weren't good enough up at Tokyo Stadium. It was a fantastic occasion, and that national anthem gave me goosebumps. It really did. It was there was many thousands of Australians up there, and they sung their guts out and they were belting out Waltzing Matilda, but the Wallabies didn't play well enough to get the job done.
No, and it's for the second week in a row. They left their run until the 50th minute to try and, claw their way back into the game. And, it happened to work against Fiji. They needed a record comeback for a Wallabies team in the World Cup to do that one. And, to win this game, to put it in perspective, it would have been the greatest World Cup comeback of all time. So, it's a big, mission that they set out for themselves. And it was ultimately, almost definitely always going to be just too hard against a team like Wales that are just so gritty and, their defence is so strong.
Now, it's an interesting question's been raised. Australia still need another win to get into that quarterfinal. They should do it easily against Uruguay and Georgia, but both of those teams have shown they've got the capacity to trouble good teams. Uruguay beat Fiji and Georgia gave Wales a very good showing. They were 14 all in the second half. So I think what you were discovering today is that they're trying to figure out selection-wise, do they put their strongest team on the field against Uruguay and guarantee that win, or do they put out the B team and roll out the strong team against Georgia to have a good, strong fixture just before the quarterfinal?
That's absolutely the dilemma, and I think it's made even more difficult by the fact that there probably hasn't been standouts in every position in the first two games, and particularly fly half is a really interesting one for them. Bernard Foley was not very impressive in that first half against Wales. Matt Tamua, straight in the attack when he came on and really made a difference. So, do they start him at 10 and sacrifice maybe having, that utility value on the bench, or do they go back to Christian Lealiifano, who was, physically bashed against Fiji and is probably still recovering a little bit from that effort last week?
I guess one positive is that you found out today that everyone is fit. So Jordan Pataya is actually on target to be selected this week. The team is named tomorrow, Wednesday. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets a run. World Cup is going, and we've seen some incredible shocks. None better than the game the day before Australia's game, Japan beating Ireland. Did anyone tip that, Beth?
No, I think is the short answer to that one. I mean, I was on the train back from the Wallabies captain's run and we were getting it up on a phone because it was that surprising that they were, that close, let alone, in a winning position. And I think probably the most significant thing out of that game is that, while they weren't favoured to win it, they absolutely were the classier side. They played Ireland, outclassed Ireland and played their game better. And it was, a really big, signpost for Japanese rugby, I think, and shows the development that they've made.
Okay, so the Wallabies have got some more training to come. They named their team for Uruguay on Wednesday before flying down to Oita on Thursday. We'll bring you some more updates with Daily Wrap tomorrow.